look off the beaten track, Vít Pohanka takes you away from the crowds to the city's hidden gems.
Welcome to another episode of Prague Off the Beaten Track, where we explore the hidden gems and sometimes overlooked stories in this fascinating city. I'm Vít Pohanka, and today I just stepped into the vast, almost mythical space of Strahov Stadium. And as I read, it is the largest stadium in the world by area, and it's a place literally steeped in history, not just of Prague, but of the whole country. By the way, when it comes to the size, it could be argued that there are some other venues where there are motor car races that are even bigger. But this stadium was actually created for people to perform mass gymnastics exercises. The stadium itself was first constructed in 1926 as a venue for displays organized by the Sokol movement, a Czech national fitness organization. And I think it's kind of interesting that the Sokol movement itself was actually inspired by the German Turner movement, or Turner movement, as you might say in English, in the 19th century. Sokol, falcon, is a symbol, I suppose, of Czech national agility. And the organization was trying to show something like, look, we can do mass exercises as well as the Germans. And if you are interested in what they looked like, I mean the Sokol events, you can find them quite easily on YouTube if you know enough Czech to type in Všesokolský sled. And that is where I got this soundscape too that you can hear in the background. So, already the young independent Czechoslovak state in the 1920s felt obviously the need to construct a venue where it could demonstrate its physical strength and virility. It did so by gradually expanding the complex of formerly wooden and earth structures in this place, using it on various occasions. For example, in 1929, when the young republic remembered the 1000th anniversary of the death of Saint Wenceslas, patron of the Czech lands, there were mass celebrations, and they were taking place here. And then again, in 1932, there was a Všesokolský sled, or giant mass meeting of the members of the Sokol movement from the whole country. So this Strahovský Stadium, or Strahov Stadium, was expanded and transformed into a colossal complex that you can still see here today, albeit rather dilapidated. And what I found really fascinating is how it was utilized by different ideologies. So, when Czechoslovakia was broken up and Prague was occupied by Nazi Germany in 1939, their soldiers staged their own giant exercises here to celebrate Adolf Hitler's 50th birthday in 1939. Later on, it became tragically one of the gathering places for Czech Jewish people before their transport to concentration and extermination camps. Still later on, in a weird twist of history, I think, German-speaking Czechs were gathered here after the end of the World War II before being expelled from Czechoslovakia. Then, as another milestone in Czech history came in 1948, as the Sokol movement held another sled or mass meeting here, they used it as a protest against the just starting communist regime, totalitarian regime. So the communists swiftly banned the Sokol organization, replaced it with Spartak, referring to Spartacus, the legendary leader of the slave revolt in ancient Rome, and this Strahovský complex became a venue for Spartakiada every 5 years between 1955 and 1985. And again, if you can type Spartakiada video in Czech into your internet search, you will be able to easily find archival footage with the sound that will, I think, quite well demonstrate and show the atmosphere of these mass events here in Strahov Stadium under communism. And here I have to admit a deeply personal connection to this place, because in 1980, as a 13-year-old boy, schoolboy I should say, I was one of the thousands of children who took part in that year's Spartakiada. Now, today, as a nearly elderly man, I fully understand how these choreographed performances were used by the Communist Party as a tool of propaganda, a grand display of national unity and ideological loyalty. But at that time, it was something else entirely for me. Please don't misunderstand me. My parents and nobody else from our extended family, as far as I know, was a card-carrying communist. My father told me all, for example, about the invasion in 1968, that he felt like a real betrayal of Czechoslovakia by the Warsaw Pact countries. So I cannot say that we were friends of the regime. But to be here in Strahov in 1980, for a kid from outside Prague, it was once-in-a-lifetime experience, believe me. During the days leading up to the main show, we had rehearsals, learning to move in perfect synchrony, and just the sheer nervous energy of knowing that we would be performing in front of thousands of spectators and TV cameras was something that I simply cannot forget. I suppose I experienced the genuine strength that such exercise can have, and such a propaganda exercise can have, not just over a naive schoolboy that I then was. But more than anything, Spartakiada then meant something very personal in other ways, because it meant getting to stay in Prague for 10 days or maybe 2 weeks, I can't remember exactly. We stayed with our group of my schoolmates, slept in a gymnasium at an elementary school in Radotín, which is now Prague 5. And then for me it was a tremendous opportunity to explore Prague. So in that summer of 1980, we did not just go to the usual sites like the astrological clock at the Old Town Square or Prague Castle. We genuinely commuted to this stadium in Strahov, and I got to know the city much better than I knew it before. And even then, under communism, there were tourists here from the West, and as silly as it may sound today, I started feeling the connection between Prague and the rest of the world and felt at home in this city for the first time in my life. And all that was thanks to these mass propaganda exercises here at Strahovský Stadion or Strahovský Stadium, as strange as it may sound. The next and last Spartakiada took actually place here in 1985, but by that time I was a little more mature, less enthusiastic about mass exercises, and perhaps more realistic, if not even cynical, as far as the communist regime was concerned. There was another Spartakiada actually planned for 1990, but since the communist regime fell a few months before it was planned to take place, neither the new government nor the city of Prague felt willing to sponsor these mass events here in Strahov. So, after 1989, as Czechoslovakia transitioned to democracy, the stadium lost its purpose and began to deteriorate, becoming one of the most intriguing yet underutilized landmarks of Prague. Throughout the 1990s, it needs to be mentioned that early 2000s, Strahov Stadium found new life as a venue for some of the largest concerts in Czech history. Legendary rock bands and artists such as the Rolling Stones, U2, Pink Floyd and Guns N' Roses performed here, drawing massive crowds. Especially the Rolling Stones' 1990 concert, I think it was in August, became a historic event. I'm not exaggerating. It kind of symbolized the newfound freedom of a country emerging from decades of communist rule. I think there were about 100,000 paying visitors, and among them, for the Rolling Stones concert, and among them was the then new Czechoslovak president Václav Havel. The Rolling Stones actually returned here in 1995 and drew even more people, some 127,000. At least that's what the press reported then. And I think it's telling as well that when Pope John Paul II visited Prague for the second time in 1995, he served a mass that again drew enormous crowds, and that was also right here in Strahov. However, as new venues became available in Prague and around the country, and the stadium condition declined, major concerts or similar events eventually moved elsewhere, leaving Strahov's rock and roll glory days behind. These days, as I'm walking around this enormous complex, I can see graffiti on the outer walls, and there have been many ideas for its future. A shopping mall, a modern sports complex, even complete demolition was considered at a certain point. But none of these plans fully materialized. It's used partly as a training ground for Sparta Prague's football team, especially their young teams. Perhaps you can hear them in the background. And there are various small businesses renting its space and different parts. The future of this Prague's great Strahov Stadium, as it is called, is under discussion, with the city trying to collaborate with the Czech Technical University, or ČVUT, and some private sector partners to transform this historic site into technological and maybe innovation hub. In September 2022, a memorandum of cooperation was signed, initiating a pilot project where the Czech Technical University will utilize some office spaces in the stadium's eastern stands. And there's one entrepreneur who plans to establish a startup laboratory within the complex. But just the sheer size of the complex, when I look around, and you can actually come in, it's open, shows that it will take a huge investment to renovate it and keep it in good shape. And frankly speaking, I think the city of Prague has other priorities, and as I record this episode of Prague of the Beaten Track in 2025, there doesn't seem to be one viable single plan or vision that would actually turn it into something other than a mega-sized monument to, well, I'm not quite sure, but monument to what? Perhaps a misled attempt or misled attempts to foster national and ideological unity by mass exercises, which used to take place here, which was later able to serve as a great venue for some rock concerts and Catholic mass, but even that proved unsustainable in the longer term. Be it as it may, I think it's a fascinating place to see. If you feel like sightseeing a little bit around this place and are ready to walk from the center up the Petřín Hill, it is not that far from the Prague Castle. And you can also get here by bus from several directions. And for more detailed information, you can always check the Prague of the Beaten Track webpage at Radio Prague International. So, thank you for joining me. And from the Strahov Stadium, I'm looking forward to meeting you next time, but I will take you to the famous Vyšehrad. Until then, stay curious and tune in again next week.
Prague off the beaten track. Vít Bohanka takes you away from the crowds to the city's hidden gems.